Hello, hope you're well. Sorry, another chatty video from me, so you're going to hear me go drone on and on and on. Oh god, great. You couldn't have burped before I started recording. Last week, I finally got a diagnosis that I've been seeking for a decade. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Quite a big deal for me. It may not seem a big deal to some of you, but some of you will get it, will understand why it's quite a pivotal moment in one's life. But a bit of housekeeping before I go into it all. So the last video I did on my health was me talking about possible diagnosis and things like that, and it was I got the most thumbs down basically that I've got in a video in a long while. And obviously when you do those videos that are so personal, you feel like quite vulnerable anyway, and you do and ah about whether you should be sharing this information, whether you feel comfortable about sharing this information. So when that happens, it does make you feel a little bit wobbly, and it makes you kind of put a guard up and think, should I be posting this stuff? Now, I don't have a problem with thumbs downs per se, because I think, you know, free speech, and everyone's, you know, has an opinion, and you have a right to an opinion, and if you didn't like my video or something I said, then absolutely, you know, it's your prerogative, isn't it? But I just think I can't learn from a thumbs down. I can't gain any information from a thumbs down. So if there's something I perhaps haven't got the terminology right for, perhaps my information's wrong, perhaps I haven't handled something sensitively enough, perhaps something has annoyed you about the video, if you feel compelled to give it a thumbs down, maybe send me a message or put a comment publicly if you prefer, and just explain why, because that's the only way that I'm gonna not do that thing again if it was something that I did wrong. It's the only way that I'm gonna educate myself if perhaps I got some medical information wrong. It's the only way I'm going to be able to better my content for you if it was the delivery that you didn't like, for instance, or the production values, for instance. So I want to do better. I want to create videos where people don't want to put thumbs down. So just give me, you know, constructive criticism if you have criticisms. Obviously, ideally, I would like you to just like the video and like me, but that's not always possible. So yeah, just I want to be better, I want to do better, so just let me know, and no hard feelings, let's just have a mature and adult chat about it. And yeah, I just want to get that housekeeping out of the way. So last week, after waiting 6 months, I got my MRI results. It was an excruciating wait, to be honest. It wasn't meant to be that long, but one of my appointments got cancelled, and then I had to rebook with him, and that meant I had to wait longer because he was booked up already and all these sorts of things. And for months, actually, they just said that my results weren't in. I obviously kept checking at my GPs to say if they come in, and they just said no, and that was even at about, I don't know, 4 or 5 months after the appointment. So I worried that they got lost and all these sorts of things, which just makes you even more anxious. But then one day I called the hospital where I had the appointment, and they said, oh, yeah, the results are in, but I can't tell you about them over the phone. You have to come in for an appointment, which might just be the protocol that there is, but that made me feel more anxious, because I was like, why is he not wanting to tell me over the phone? I said, can you write a letter? He's like, no, you have to speak to the specialist. So yeah, it's been an anxious wait is what I'm trying to tell you. But anyway, so last week the appointment finally arrived, and I thought it was going to be the guy I saw before. And if you've seen my last video, you will remember that he did a few quick tests on me, but thought because I don't have stretchy skin particularly, and I think it was my knees weren't bending enough and my finger wasn't bendy quite enough, he said he dismissed the EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome route of investigation. He did book me in for lots of bloods and the MRI just to discount some other possible avenues, and I guess he hoped he'd be able to pinpoint something. It was. After that appointment though, he did refer me to a podiatrist who was the guy that sorted me out with those special insoles for my very high arches. And he happened to be someone that knows a lot about EDS and even lectures about EDS and knows lots of doctors that work in EDS related illnesses. And he had a look at me and he was like, I think you do have one of these EDS related illnesses. He didn't specify which category or and said I might just be one of the tissue disorders, but he didn't specify which one, but he said you've got enough stuff going on that says you probably do. Anyway, I was worried that when I had my appointment this time round, I'd see the same specialist as last time and I would be not getting any helpful information and it would be another closed door or kind of dead end. That's the word I'm trying to think of. It would be another dead end. But I went in and it was a new doctor and he sat me down and pretty much straight away he said, I know what's going on with you. And I can't tell you how exciting it was when he said that. It was probably the most exciting thing anyone said to me in my whole life, which is a bit depressing, but it was really exciting. And I was like, okay. My heart was really thumping because I was like, what was it? Basically, that's quite a vague statement, but anyway, so he went through all my bloods and he was able to rule out lupus, which had been a concern along the way, so that was a really good thing to rule out and I was very pleased about that. He actually said, he said at the moment there's no arthritis showing. Obviously I'm not saying you won't get it, but I could say that to anyone, like there's always a chance you might get it as you get older, but he said at the moment it doesn't seem to be there in the places that they looked at least. He said there's some wear and tear on my spine in I think it's T11 and T12, but he said, you know, nothing to be too worried about there. Pelvis showed up fine in the MRI, nothing to worry about there. Unfortunately, they didn't scan the neck, so I think that is definitely an area in the future, once I get the energy to pursue this some more, that should be looked at, because when I'm at the hairdressers I literally have to hold up my neck sometimes because there's so much weakness there, but that's a whole nother area to investigate. So in short, he says I have EDS and POTS. He was asking why I don't think I've been diagnosed earlier, and I said, well, some people I spoke to didn't even know what POTS or Ehlers-Danlos is. I'd hinted so many times about having various tests, and you know, if you've been through this process, you know what it's like. And this isn't any shade on GPs. GPs are general practitioners. They're not experts in specific areas, and this is quite I guess a niche subject, so I'm not saying that they shouldn't look into it more, but I'm saying I understand why they don't know perhaps the ins and outs of it all. And he said the reason, you know, the specialist that I saw before might have not thought I had it is because, you know, I'm not a classic case of it. He said I'm a non-classic Ehlers-Danlos, so I thought I'd just go through the things that I have, and now like researching it a bit more, why it seems very clear actually that it is something that I have. He said another reason why people might have gone, no, you don't have that, is because I'm incredibly stiff actually, and I think a lot of people associate it with people that are extremely bendy and flexible, and I've unfortunately got some fusion happening now and stiffness, but that doesn't mean I wasn't once bendy. And it also doesn't, if you look at the 2017 classification, you don't have to be bendy to have it. So it's about the specialists being up to date on the latest findings, I guess, will make a huge impact on whether you get the right diagnosis or whether they consider that diagnosis. As I said before, I've got spider fingers, and these fingers are completely fused here. It's almost as if there isn't a joint, but it's very bulky there, and I've got some like chunky joints going on in a lot of the fingers. Got varicose veins, which is often a sign as well. hearing. So I hadn't connected this at all to it, but since researching a bit more, so you might remember on some of the vlogs I've been talking about going slightly deaf in my ear, so much so that my voice was changing because I couldn't hear what I was sounding like, and this has been happening a lot probably over the last 1 or 2 years. And that can be to do with, you know, the tissue not supporting the small bones or something in the ear. So that could be a result of EDS, but I would have never connected that. I've always had extremely painful jaw, particularly in cold weather, very clicky jaw as well. And it's excruciating. It's one of the most painful pains, and that can be a symptom of EDS. In terms of the POTS, you might remember last summer I Insta-storied about how after I was standing for a long period of time I was getting these kind of purple dots on my legs, but the rest of my leg was kind of white, and that is another thing that people with POTS have. I think it's something to do with blood pooling to the bottom of the body. I have crowded teeth. That's another thing I would have never even thought to mention. I obviously have struggled with fainting and dizziness a lot in my time, and that's a POTS related thing. And the thing is, they might not have ever thought it was POTS related because Ehlers-Danlos and POTS sometimes and quite often come together, so that kind of connection might not have been made by the GPs. Heart palpitations, I've struggled with them a lot, and obviously that's always been put down to anxiety, but it happens a lot when I'm just resting and I don't feel particularly stressed, and sometimes I get these palpitations that are so violent that it makes me cough. And because my mum's got a heart condition, of course that's something that needs to be explored a bit more in depth. So he is going to, I'll talk about what's going to happen next in a bit. Anyway, I couldn't sleep the other night and I was reading up more about it, more people that are doing research about it. And one guy was saying that he's found a common theme that a lot of people are allergic to salicylates that have EDS. And obviously that's something that I found out a few years ago through Guildford Hospital when they were investigating my IBS issues. And obviously IBS issues is another sign of EDS as well. You've seen the rashes I get as well, that's another symptom. I get hives, and because one of my rashes was slightly butterfly shaped, I think that's why there was a concern about lupus, but it's not connected to lupus. It is obviously just an EDS thing that occurs. And I'm obviously intolerant to alcohol, which is another common theme. When I was younger, I had suspected hernias, and that's another thing that we are prone to if you have EDS, and that's prolapses and hernias. And I think that's just because our tissue doesn't support in the same way that people without EDS dysfunction. Maybe sometimes it supports too much, but anyway, it causes things to happen. Obviously I have the hip subluxations that happen all the time, and I'm pretty sure it happens with my shoulder as well. I feel things popping out all the time, dislocations and I'm never sure if I'm saying this right, subluxations. That's a common thing that happens. A lot of people with EDS, it's that they've got a club foot or a really flat foot and fallen arches, but actually more recent research shows that it can also be people with the extremely high arches, me basically. Another common theme is that people with EDS don't respond well to anaesthetic, and the last time I had an operation I had a bad reaction to anaesthetic, and at the time we didn't know why, but perhaps this explains that. The bladder issues, again, this is something with EDS that happens. I could go into the medical reasons why you're more prone to bladder issues, but my brain is just absolutely fried, but there's a lot of information online if you want to investigate that. Anxiety and depression is another thing that, again, you wouldn't automatically perhaps link to it, but a lot of people have that, whether it's a result of, you know, the impact EDS and POTS has on your life would likely lead to that, who knows, but it is a fact. Now moving forward, he's going to put me in touch with a physio that will just help me strengthen the muscles, so therefore the muscles will better support my joints, particularly the ones that dislocate. He's going to put me in touch with a heart specialist, because obviously that needs a lot more attention, and we need to also probably work out which category I am in in terms of EDS, because I'm not a classic one. I don't neatly fit into one, but because I've got the heart issues, we obviously need to find out if I have the vascular type, for instance. So yeah, moving forward it will be heart specialists, physio. He's given me some cocodamol to help with the pain, but he did and ah about that quite a lot, and I think he wasn't sure about giving me that, and I know a lot of people don't do well on that medication, but I just explained that festival season's quite challenging for me, and it's a lot of time on my feet and being upright, so it'd be good to have some strong pain relief even if I just use it for that, and I promised him I wouldn't use it too often or anything like that. Now the next thing I actually want your help with, because how long have I been talking? Long, as always. So he asked me whether I was planning on having kids, but he asked me like this: so are you planning on having kids? And I was like, not right now, but in the future, yes. And he carried on doing that kind of face. I was like, oh no. And he basically just said, because we talked about family history and, you know, the fact my mum's got a heart condition, all this sort of stuff, he said, I would thoroughly recommend that you have thorough genetic testing before you go ahead and have children. Which obviously it's not great to hear, but at the same time it's better to know. I'd rather, you know, make sure I do things as safely and as sensibly as possible, particularly if I'm bringing a new life into the world. I want to know what, you know, might happen and what I might be passing on potentially. But yeah, so I'll be honest, this week has involved quite a few stressful conversations relating to future and what people want and what all this means, etc. But I have watched a lot of videos by people with EDS this week, and I watched one video of a woman that has it who's had 3 kids successfully, and I watched another one who was pregnant, and so it's not like it's not going to happen, it's not like it's not possible, but yeah, there might be some big decisions to make, and I don't know what it means really, but I'd love anyone to give feedback, I guess. I think because I have issues with my hips falling out the socket and stuff, obviously the pressure down there with a big bump would be a cause for concern. I know there's, like I said earlier, issues with prolapsing and things like that because things aren't supported in the same way as healthy bodies are. If there's a heart issue with me, that might affect whether, you know, carrying a baby and going into labour is sensible for me. Because I know that my mum only found out about her heart condition when she was pregnant and giving birth. So yeah, there's a chance, for instance, that children won't happen for me, maybe, or might not be the sensible choice. There's a chance I might have to think about different routes like surrogacy or adoption. But then with those routes, you have to make sure everyone that's involved in creating this family is happy with that. So yeah, it's caused a lot of things to think about basically. But I think for most of us that have been seeking out a diagnosis for a long time, the big fear is going to an appointment and coming out with no answers or no progress or being completely dismissed. So to go to an appointment and a specialist confidently telling me what's going on was a great outcome, and I felt so conflicted because obviously it's not great news. None of this is like woohoo, but at the same time I was so happy to have the news. I think you start to doubt yourself, you think, am I imagining these things? Like, have I been wasting people's time? Do people think I'm just a hypochondriac? So someone say what you've been feeling, the pain you've been feeling, the symptoms you've been having, it's just like validation. I don't know why us humans need it, but I think in this instance we really do need it, and everyone deserves to know what's going on with their own body, particularly when it affects their daily life so much. So yeah, so it was a weird, I was really happy, but at the same time I knew it might mean my future wasn't what I imagined it was going to be, but it might not affect it. I have so many questions. He didn't really say whether this new diagnosis meant that chronic fatigue syndrome isn't something I have, so I don't know whether I have POTS, EDS and CFS, or whether I just have EDS and POTS. And I guess that's not a question that I actually need the answer for, as long as I'm getting the care and attention I need moving forward. But yeah, I wonder whether it's just been a wrong diagnosis this whole. So yeah, sorry, production value's low, Barnet terrible, but we've got there. A decade in, I have an answer, and I guess I want to encourage you all to keep going. I'm not saying you have to keep going relentlessly. Sometimes you need a little break from it. I know I've taken little breaks along the way where I'm like, I can't keep asking for a new specialist. I can't keep going back to the GP. I'm fed up with it. I just need a break, because it gets demoralising. It gets so frustrating. You get very tired from it, and if you're tired anyway, you don't need that on top of it. But if you need to take a break, do it. But also, please persevere, because the more cases, particularly ones that aren't classic or not easily diagnosed, the more they have of these, the more they're going to understand the intricacies of these invisible and chronic illnesses. The fact that not everyone is textbook. The fact that sometimes you need to look outside of the box. The fact you really need to look back on medical history and go and kind of just join the dots a little bit, because when you look at everything that's happened to me over the years, it literally all points to this diagnosis that I finally got. But unless someone's got the time to really look at that, they're maybe not going to see those connections. And I would actually say, as excruciatingly painful it can be to go, have you thought about this, to a doctor, because they don't enjoy you doing that, it has been integral to me getting the answers. If I hadn't told my GP that my osteopath had mentioned that I seemed to have some EDS type symptoms, she wouldn't have gone, actually you're right, maybe I should refer you to the rheumatologist. The ball wouldn't have started rolling, is what I'm saying essentially. So don't be scared to do it, because it could be the turning point. So another thing that a few people have mentioned to me that I should look into, because they've witnessed my symptoms or are aware of my symptoms, is mast cell activation. And that is something, once the heart stuff is looked into a bit more, that's another area I will probably start pursuing, because the speed of my reactions, the sort of reactions I get to things, would suggest that that is probably going on with me as well, perhaps. But one step at a time. I'm just pleased to have this going on. So anyone else with Ehlers-Danlos, anyone else with POTS, I'd really, really appreciate any information, any feedback, any tidbits of help, any advice, because this is a new diagnosis for me, and while I can do lots of research online to speak to people that are actually going through it or have gone through it, and particularly on the carrying a child, getting pregnant, giving birth side of stuff, that'd be really helpful to know as well. Not that I'm planning on doing it now, because I'm not financially in a good position to have a child, but just down the line it'd be helpful to know this sort of information. Thank you for watching. I've waffled on forever again, I'm sorry. But sending lots of love to all of you still trying to get that diagnosis. You'll get there. It shouldn't take this long, god damn it, but hopefully you will get there sooner rather than later, and I'll be sending all my diagnosis vibes to you and hope you get there soon. Thanks for watching, lots of love, and I'll see you in a video soon.